You've probably seen videos like this. Old photographs, paper textures, big typography, cut out images moving across the screen, and somehow it feels less like an animation and more like a documentary. But here's the interesting part. You don't need a huge animation team to create this kind of video. You don't even need to animate everything yourself. In this video, I'm going to show you how I build this entire visual style using AI, design, and a little bit of motion. Because the secret isn't actually animation, it's visual storytelling. Before I generate a single image, I start with the story. Because if the story isn't interesting, no amount of beautiful visuals is going to save it. I usually break the story into 5 simple parts: the hook, the problem, the discovery, the explanation, and finally, the payoff. Once I know what I'm trying to say, I go sentence by sentence. And this is where the process starts to get interesting. Because every important sentence needs a visual idea, not necessarily a literal image, a visual idea. Let's say the narration says, "This brand became global." I could simply show a person saying those words, but that's boring. Instead, I can show a product traveling across a world map. Suddenly, the idea becomes visual, and that's the difference between showing information and actually telling a story. A good explainer doesn't just ask, "What should the viewer see?" It asks, "What should the viewer understand?" That's a very different question. Before generating the assets, I create a visual language because AI can generate beautiful images. But beautiful images don't automatically belong together. So I decide on the visual system first: the paper texture, the color palette, the typography, the photographic treatment, the amount of grain, the shadows, even the imperfections. For this style, I'm keeping things simple: warm cream, charcoal black, a little muted coral, and a touch of olive green. The goal is that every image should feel like it came from the same film, not from 5 different AI generators. Now I can start generating the actual assets. And here's one of the biggest mistakes I see people make with AI. They ask the AI to create the entire scene in one prompt. Sometimes it works. Most of the time, you lose control. So instead, I generate the pieces separately: a person, a bottle, a map, a newspaper clipping, a building, a background. Think of it like building a film set. I'm not asking AI to build the entire movie. I'm asking it to give me the ingredients. And once I have those ingredients, I can become the art director. Now I bring everything together. I start with the first layer, then another, a photograph, a newspaper clipping, some masking tape, a little typography, and finally, a small accent color. The important thing here is not to make everything perfectly aligned. Real editorial collages have imperfections. Paper overlaps. Edges don't line up perfectly. Images are slightly tilted. Some elements sit behind others. Those little imperfections make the composition feel physical. Almost like you could reach into the screen and move the pieces yourself. Now comes the part that makes the collage feel alive. And here's a secret. You don't actually need complicated animation. Most of the movement can be incredibly simple. A slow zoom, a small rotation, a paper sliding into frame, a photograph being revealed, or a camera moving slowly across the composition. The trick is, don't animate everything. Animate the thing the viewer should notice. If the photograph is important, move the photograph. If the word is important, move the word. If everything moves at the same time, nothing feels important. Motion isn't decoration. It's direction. Typography is another character in the film. I don't want text to behave like subtitles. I want it to become part of the story. A single word can become huge. A sentence can break apart. Letters can move away from each other. Or sometimes one word is enough. Like this: global. The viewer doesn't just read it, they experience it. And that's why I think of typography as a visual element, not just information. Text doesn't always have to explain the image. Sometimes the text is the image. Then comes something people often underestimate: sound. A paper sliding across the screen feels completely different when you actually hear the paper. A photograph landing needs a tiny impact. A camera movement can have a subtle whoosh. A transition can have a small mechanical sound. And suddenly, a flat 2D composition starts to feel physical. I usually think about sound in 4 layers: voice, music, sound effects, and ambience. You don't need hundreds of sounds, you just need the right sounds at the right moments. Now let's compare the two. On the left, we have a static collection of images. It looks fine, but it doesn't really tell us anything. On the right, we have movement, hierarchy, sound, typography, depth, and most importantly, a reason for every element to be there. That's the difference between a collection of visuals and a visual story. And after all those small decisions, this is what we get. A collection of individual images becomes a single visual world. The photographs, the typography, the paper, the movement, the sound, they all start working together. And that's the part I love most about this process. The final film doesn't feel like a bunch of AI-generated images anymore. It feels intentional. It feels directed. And that brings me to the most important lesson. AI can generate images. AI can generate video. AI can generate sound. It can even help generate ideas. But AI doesn't automatically know what the audience needs to see next. That's still the designer's job. That's still the filmmaker's job. That's still the director's job. So don't think of AI as the animator. Think of it as your production team. You are the director. And that's exactly what I'm exploring here on Pinky AI. How designers and creators can use AI not just to make pretty images, but to turn ideas into actual creative work. AI can generate, you direct, you design, you decide, and you tell the story. This is Pinky AI. Design AI film. Let's create something.